Down the road in a tree.
She doesn't live in a tree, Mr. Douglas. The winter Lundie's a great person. Oh, they told me I'd take it to her. I hadn't wanted it because I was hoping we could have this day together.
Well, what's that got to do with it?
It's gonna be so hard for you to believe what I mean. You think there's something wrong with us and you leave. I know it.
Maybe I will and maybe I won't. Come on, Jet. Is it informal or should I wear my three-cornered hat? Come on, I say.
Good day, winter Lundie.
Why, hello, Fiona. What a pleasant surprise. Yeah.
All right, she lives under a tree.
Winter Lundie, I'd like you to meet Mr. Tommy Albright and Mr. Jeff Douglas.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
How do you do, ma'am? Good afternoon.
Where do you gentlemen come from?
We're from New York.
We're from New York.
Uh-huh. Yes, New York.
I heard you.
Winter Lundie, I was wondering if you'd be good enough to tell this gentleman about Brigadoon. They've heard and seen a good deal and they're very perplexed indeed.
Perplexed is right.
I would very much like him, I mean them, to know.
I would very much like him. I mean them to know.
Aye, Mum.
Well, let me see you, gentlemen. I'm staying, Fiona.
Oh, if I may, Mum, I'd love to hear it all again.
Of course.
From what I gather, no one around here can talk about anything with you. Is that right?
No, that's wrong. Mr. Forsyth could have told me.
Ah, Forsyth. I've heard of him, but I didn't meet him.
Likely not. I think he's dead.
Yeah, that would stand in the way, I suppose.
Now, let me warn you, but before I begin, that's what I'm about to tell you, you wouldn't believe.
It's all right. I've already been warned. Why won't I believe it?
Because what happened in Brigadoon was a miracle, and most folk don't believe in miracles. Miracles require faith, and faith seems to be as dead as...
Mr. Forsyth.
Aye. Now, if an outsider chanced to come to Brigadoon were to hear the tale from the lips of someone in town, he'd think that lass or lad was daft, and that would lead to many unpleasant and humiliating things for the poor lass or laddie, now, wouldn't it?
I suppose so.
I suppose so. So, only I can talk about the medical to strangers.
And you don't imagine that anybody would think you're crazy.
It was very well, but it wouldn't hurt me. I just pity you. Now, let's see. This medical happened. What's today?
Friday.
Friday. That means it happened exactly 200 years ago. 200 years ago, the Highlands of Scotland were plagued with witches. Wicked sorcerers who had taken the Scottish folk away from the teachings of God and put the devil in their souls. Oh, they were indeed horrible, destructive women. I don't suppose you have such women in your world.
Witches? Yes, we still have them. We pronounce it differently.
Well, it doesn't matter, they're not real sorcerers, because I know there is no such thing. But their influence was very real indeed. Now, here in Brigadoon we had an old minister of the kirk named Mr. Forsyth, oh, and a good man he was. The kindest man ever, but he was growing old, and it grieved him to think that one day soon he would leave all those so dear to him. But most of all, he worried about the witches. They hadn't visited Brigadoon yet, but he knew a band of them was coming our way, so he began to wonder if there wasn't something he could do to protect the folk of his parish, not only from them, but from all the evils that might come to Brigadoon from the outside world after he died.
What a kind man.
He spent many days walking through the glen thinking, and if he had passed his house any hour of the night, you would have seen the candles lit and Mr. Forsyth sitting in his chair thinking. Then one day he came to me and told me he had decided to ask God for a medical.
Oh, that's part is so nice. I could cry thinking about that.
He consulted with me about it because he knew I am a highly logical man. And he figured as long as he was going to ask for a medical, it might as well be a well-organized medical. So, for many days, I walked through the glen with him. And For many nights I sat with him by candlelight. Finally, Mr. Forsyth decided what he was going to pray for. And on an early Wednesday morn, right after midnight, Mr. Forsyth went out to a hell beyond Brigadoon and made his prayer to God. There, in the hush of a sleeping world, he asked God that night to make Brigadoon and all the people in it vanish into the Highland mist. Vanish! But not for always. It would all return just as it were for one day every 100 years. Now people would go on leading their customary lives, but each morn when they awakened, it would be 100 years later, and when we awoke the next day, it was 100 years later.
My God.
Listen, Mr. Forsyth figured in this way there would be no change in the lives of the people. They just wouldn't have been any century long enough to be touched by it.
Wait a minute. So you go to bed at night. When you get up the next day, it's 100 years later?
Aye.
And then every day after that is 100 years later?
Aye.
What happened to the minister?
We never saw him again. You see, he realized that to ask for such a miracle, some sacrifice would have to be made. And he wanted to be the one to make it. Now, what would be the greatest sacrifice he could offer? It was to be separated for his time from the ones he loved. So that's why he went out to a hell beyond Brigadoon, where the medical granted he would never see Brigadoon again.
And all this happened 200 years ago?
Aye, oh, but you see, it's only 2 days ago to us. He had intended to ask for the medical on Tuesday, but Charles Dalrymple was in school in Edinburgh and was not expected back till Tuesday late. Mr. Forsyth not wanted anything to go wrong with the wedding, postponed pray until Charlie got back.
Wasn't that sweet of him?
Let me ask you something. Suppose someone gets fed up and wants to leave. Then what?
He cannot leave.
Wait, you not gotta stay now?
Oh, no, Dad. But according to Mr. Forsyth's contract with God, if anyone of Brigadoon leaves, the enchantment is broken for all.
And then what?
Then, when the people go to sleep that night, Brigadoon will disappear forever.
Look, I'm not saying I believe all this, but let's just say, for argument's sake, that a stranger comes to Brigadoon, someone like me, and he wants to stay. Could he?
That he could. Mr. Forsyth provided for that.
He didn't miss the trick, did he?
He did not. A stranger can stay if he knows someone here, not just Brigadoon, mind ye, but someone in Brigadoon enough to want to give up everything and stay with that one person, which is how it should be. Because after all that, if you love someone deeply, anything is possible.
I think I like that part the best.
Oh, shouldn't you be thinking about changing for the wedding?
Hiya, Hut. Tommy, will I see you later?
Yes, I'll be here.
Thank you, Tommy.
I want to stick around and see if this place evaporates, like you say.
I must hurry now. But thank you, Widow Lundie.
She's a dear lass.
I'm finding that out. Tell me, Widow Lundie, you're all perfectly happy living here in this small town?
Of course, lad. After all, sunshine can peep through a small hole.
But at night when you go to sleep, what's it like?
Well, for me, 'tis like being carried on shadowy arms to some far-off cloud, and there I float till morning. And yet, sometimes I think I hear strange voices.
Voices?
Aye, they say no words I can remember, but their voices filled with a fearful longing, and often they seem to be calling me back. I ponder it when I'm awake, and I think, I have a feeling I'm here in the outside world. There must be lots of folk out there who'd like a Brigadoon